Yo, welcome to my little subscriber up YouTube. Today, we're going to be watching over the game of Sander up against Niels. I want to say, I'm not 100% sure, but we're going to be watching the Eldegoss Loop by Sander. Once we're in the loop, we're going to be kind of done with it because it gets boring once you get to the loop, but getting to the loop is quite enjoyable. I was originally thinking like, okay, am I going to play some games on ladder with this deck? I was playing some games with ladder on this deck, and I think this is the best way to actually see the loop in action and see what's happening. A, Sander plays the deck better than I will, and B, I know he sets up very well and everything kind of goes smoothly. So it's not like the best deck in the world currently. People have kind of figured it out. It's something that catches people off guard. But here's our early game. So one thing that Sander's going to do immediately here is he's going to get rid of the single strike energy as one of the cards. The single strike energy is in this deck for, and the deck list will be down in the description below. The single strike energy is in this deck for the Mew matchup so that your Umbreon VMAX with a single strike energy plus a double turbo energy can KO a Mew VMAX. So in the early game with this deck, it's really all about getting set up. You're fine giving your opponent a couple of turns. You can give up 5 prizes and be totally fine winning this game. So that's pretty much where Sander's at right now. I'm just like, I'm just going to try and get my Snorlaxes. I'm not going to get my Umbreons until I get ready to put a Sun and Moon badge on them. There's the Lax. He plays 4 Lax for a reason. We see the prizes real quick. No really bad prizes on either side. Both people are probably pretty content with what they've prized. So early game with this deck, you really just want to get set up, and that's what we're going to be watching Sander go for here is going to be that Lax. And let's see what else is in the hand. We're going to see a Retreat and a Gormandize, and that's the dream. You play plenty of these energies. He plays a Roseanne so he can get it back. You really just want to draw cards, get through your deck as fast as possible. You're trying to deck yourself out as quickly as possible, which can be hard without the Cinccino engine. You know, other control decks, you're playing Cinccino, you're constantly using Make Do to not only thin out dead cards, but draw 2 cards out of the deck. It was a very strong combo. Now we do see Niels here is not going to have a very great turn 1, but against control, it's totally fine. You know, you don't really need that much for it. So Sander's got to be feeling good at this point when you don't have anything going on your opponent's side. We see a capture energy as well with a Jolteon in hand. We're feeling pretty okay. In this matchup or any matchup with Sobbles, you want to get the Jolteon set up. And it's not even about the Jolteon like sticking. Sometimes the Jolteon is just good bait to get them to boss instead of doing something else on a turn. Like you do want to set up the Jolteon because if you can shut them down, you're totally fine. But otherwise, you're kind of like, okay, I have my Jolteon. I'm going to make things awkward for you if I can. And then, you know what? If you boss it, that's okay, because I got to set up, I got to do stuff. You didn't disrupt my hand. I got to Gormandize. You didn't go target some other Pokemon that's going to help me with consistency or anything like that. I get to Gormandize again next turn. So you want to set up the Jolteon, but also you don't really hate the Jolteon getting boss KO'd because it's fine. It doesn't really help your setup. So now we see Sander in hand has a Sun and Moon badge. When you get the Sun and Moon badge, that's when you want to put down these Umbreons. The Sun and Moon badge prevents technically Flannery too, but the boss's orders on these Umbreons. And so because of that, as soon as you have them, you want to get your Umbreons down. And then what else Sander's going to do here is Bruno. This is a type of play that I think is very important for the deck. You have the Snorlax in the active. Sometimes you'd be like, oh, I really don't want a Bruno yet. I want to wait until I can, you know, something gets knocked out and I can draw 7. You have Gormandize. You just want to see more cards, progress your board state a little bit, and then you can just Gormandize up to 7 anyway, and you're totally fine. Unfortunately, we don't see Sander's hand here, but he's feeling kind of okay with this setup. You want to get down multiple Umbreons with the Sun and Moon badges. You'd like to get down your Jirachi at some point. This match, you want to get down your Eevee. Remember, you can bench 5 prizes that aren't Umbreons. So far we have 2. Get my mouse on the screen. We have 2 prizes. Eevee's going to be 3. And then we have to decide what the other 2 are going to be. Potentially another Snorlax, potentially that, not Stellar Wish Jirachi, the amazing rare Jirachi. I forget the ability, Dreamy Revelation. And then at some point, we'll have to get down a second Umbreon. You do need 2 Umbreons for this. You also see, again, Sander getting rid of the single strike energy. It is not here for this matchup. So now we have 4 prizes on the field. We get to Gormandize again. We have our 1 Sun and Moon badge, so we're happy there. So our end goal is going to be that second Umbreon with the Sun and Moon badge ASAP. We'd like to get the Jolteon with the memory capsule set up as well, because it just puts more pressure on our opponent and gives us a little bit more time to set up. So let's see if we can see the hand from Sander. See a capture energy, capture and get out that other Umbreon if there's a Sun and Moon badge in hand. Now we're going to see Niels' turn. All right. That is a discard pile. I'm also going to turn this up a little bit faster. This is actually a terrible play here too. For anyone wondering how do I beat this deck, Averying away a prize card helps Sander a lot. And with that said, I can't blame them. They have no freaking clue what's going on. I didn't either when I first turned this round on, but you want to keep these things on the bench. By playing the Avery, they get rid of their Yveltal. Yveltal never really hurts you here, and that gives them a chance to bench another prize card that they otherwise would not have been able to bench. So it gives them essentially another turn to bench a setup Mon and to set up even further. So if they start something that they don't want, like this Yveltal, an Avery like this is just not good for you, because it gives them another chance to set up another Pokemon. Sander, literally no hesitations. Like, all right, get rid of this thing. The other 3, I need those. Now, if they have 5 things on the bench, they have to get rid of something good. Yeah, sure. Avery's fine there. Had that Yveltal been another Umbreon or something like that, maybe another Snorlax even, sure, that's totally fine. Them getting rid of another Snorlax kind of hurts them a bit, because you go Avery, get rid of that Snorlax, and ideally you'd knock it out this turn. You can't knock it out this turn, so maybe not the best thing in the world there. We're going to see Niels go ahead and set up, get some shady dealings out there, see what he can do. This is a kind of a pretty awkward matchup. When you have a slightly slow start like this, you have to apply pressure. For sure. You have to time your Marnies very well. You have to use your bosses correctly. And you have to apply pressure ASAP. The more time Sander has, the more likely his setup's going to work. One thing that is a very good play here is we're going to Trinity Charge to ourselves. And we're going to do a second energy, yes, just in case of a Flannery, Crushing Hammers. At this point, we don't know Sander doesn't play Crushing Hammers. But it's a control deck. There's always a chance. We do know that there's Flannery in the deck. So Sander, big ol' hand, has 2 more bench spots to work with. Sander's feeling pretty good at this point. So now, again, your goal is to get 1 more Umbreon with the Sun and Moon badge on the bench. And I guess that extra bench spot, it could be anything really, but you're probably going to want to go for another Snorlax to Gormandize with. This play right here, putting the capture on the Jirachi, this gives you a free Dreamy Revelation and a pivot off of it. You're never going to attack with the Umbreon in this matchup. That's just not. The Umbreon attacks in the Mew matchup because taking a KO is the same thing as hitting 2 Crushing Hammerheads or getting 2 Flannerys in the same turn or anything like that. In the Mew matchup, and that's one that it might be worth me getting a recording of in the future, you've got to take your prizes. You're going to Flannery, you're going to Yveltal, and you're probably going to have to take 1 knockout. So now, Umbreon with the Sun and Moon badge, he got it off of there. Boss stall, this is another thing that this deck wants to do. So if you're trying to set up this Eldegoss Loop, you're just going to constantly, I'm going to boss, I'm going to Umbreon, put stuff in the active, make your opponent uncomfortable. Always think, what does my opponent not want me to do? My opponent doesn't want that Sobble in the active. I'm going to put that Sobble in the active, force him to waste a scoop up net, waste an attachment to retreat. 1 less scoop up net means even if they get the boss KO on that Jolteon eventually, that's 1 less shady dealings they can work with. And one more play that Sander made is we put the Sun and Moon badge on the Snorlax. Sander plays Shopping Center. So if you're ever playing this deck, one thing that you can do is throw a Sun and Moon badge down if you have access to all of them early. You just Shopping Center it off later. So even if Niels plays a Tool Scrapper, it's fine. You can Scrapper 2 of them, but then you can still Shopping Center, move this one over to an Umbreon, and you're good to go. You're totally fine. Now, one thing Sander really wants to do is get these things VMAX, because what Niels can do technically, we know by now that he does not play a, what's it called? Doesn't play a Scrapper, but has the potential to go Scrapper, Boss, KO, and Umbreon with a Choice Belt on this, or with a Quick Shooting plus the Trinity Nova for 180. But that's why this thing goes here. You save it every single time. If you can, you get to Gormandize for 1 more and you're good there. So now we got the tower. Sweet. Get to draw some cards. This is one of the reasons for all the Flanneries. You need the Flanneries for the Mew matchup, but also this is your draw engine. Funny enough, if you listen to the first time Sander was on the Lake of Rage podcast, he talked about the idea of using Tower of Darkness as a draw engine, and it's surprisingly viable. So again, Sander's quick balling away the cards he does not need. At this point, Sander doesn't need to Marnie. His board is almost entirely set up. He's good to go there. You just kind of want to see more and more cards. But yep, we get to Bird Keeper, we get to Dreamy Revelations, and we're trying to draw as much as we can. Marnie puts cards back in the deck, Bird Keeper gets cards out of the deck. From Neil's side, the Arceus player, you see a big old hand over there. You want a Marnie at some point, for sure. So Dreamy Revelation grabs the Eldegoss. Eldegoss is a part of that loop, so you're going to want it at some point. Capture is going to be able to grab us out another Pokemon. Remember, you can bench 5 prizes, so you have 4 more prizes to work with, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can bench any single prizer if he so desired. There's nothing else Sander really needs at this point. He's like totally fine. He's got a big old hand of cards. Goes into the Snorlax without the Sun and Moon badge to preserve. And draws another card. So this play right here, we preserve the Jirachi with... Oops. Got to get my mouse back. There we go. Preserves the Jirachi with Dreamy Revelation, preserve the Sun and Moon badge, and we're shutting off our opponent. Now we do see the boss. That's okay. You don't hate that. This is not your win condition. This is bait. Sometimes it slows your opponent down a little bit. So Sander is in a very fine spot. Opponent has taken 2 prizes, and Sander almost has the loop entirely set up. You're gonna see a prize taken at some point. Oh yeah, there it is. And there's the prize. So now Sander's feeling pretty good to go. Could potentially just tank a hit here. Look at the prizes, see what he can get. It's one of those things where sometimes you just play the Peonia because you don't really need anything, but you're just like, well, I have dead cards in hand. Maybe there's something in the prizes that you would like. Yeah, you don't need the Eevee anymore. You don't need the Yveltal at all in this matchup, and the Big Charm's not for this matchup either. Your 2 Umbreons are going to be 1 Sun and Moon badge, 1 Air Balloon, and that's it. You don't need a Big Charm for this one specific matchup. This thing can tank a hit, so you're totally fine here. Then when we can see a Bird Keeper onto the bench, draw some more cards. Sander knows that there is nothing in Niels' deck that can take an Oko on this Umbreon. The Bird Keeper is going to let him draw more cards. He's going to get 0 value out of a Gormandize, while he would get value out of this thing taking a hit, and maybe there's a Marnie, and then you go attach, retreat, Gormandize. So you want to protect those Snorlaxes to play around Marnie as much as you can. So super heads up play. You know, Sander knows exactly what he's doing. One of his loss conditions is Marnie into a dead hand. So being able to just say, all right, Umbreon, tank a hit so I can keep these 2 Snorlaxes, because Sander cannot bench another Pokemon. Sander has to survive with the Jirachi and the 2 Snorlaxes in this game. And there's a smack. I don't know why the quick shooting went there. The quick shooting should have gone on the Jirachi for sure. No Marnie is super unfortunate. Sander's going to keep digging. He's got the tower. He's got everything he needs in hand. The puke. You love to see the puke. At this point, you're looking for the other VMAX. And you can just go ahead and bench it, Bird Keeper into it, start applying pressure. You can go into the Jirachi, see more cards. Sander's in full control at this point, just trying to deck himself out ASAP. Your Umbreon cannot get hit. Now, with that said, you may be saying, Mello, what if Niels has a Tool Scrapper? Sander's not playing around it. You don't play around it. You do not play around a Tool Scrapper boss on the Umbreon. You just say, if my opponent has it like that, I'm going to lose the game anyway. There's nothing to play around. There we see the, I forget the name, the Bloodthirsty Eyes. Bring up the Sobble. Again, you're constantly just like, well, if I'm going to evolve, I'm going to put something in the active you don't want. You're trying to buy yourself a turn or force your opponent to use resources so they can't use resources elsewhere. That's something you're going to constantly try and do with this deck when you can. And now Sander probably has too big of a hand. The Shopping Center is going to be able to get the balloon, yep, onto the Umbreon, and the Umbreon's going to go ahead and tank a hit. And again, we're playing around Marnie right now. There's no reason to bump those Snorlaxes into the active, because why? If my opponent Marnies me, I'm probably losing the game anyway. If they KO the Snorlaxes, so now if they Marnie me, I just go ahead and retreat the Umbreon. Gorman dies, and I'm good to go. So we're totally fine there. There's a little mistake. Sobble goes on the bench. No big deal. That stuff happens. So now we're going to be able to see the Cheryl for the full effect. If there's a Marnie, again, I think that's one of the best things that Niels can do here is go for the Marnie smack. Hope that Sander can't find a Cheryl when there's so few cards in deck. It seems unlikely. Tower to draw more cards. Again, you're getting rid of the cards you don't want. You're getting the single strike energies. Or sorry, you're getting the 2 cards. You're getting rid of the cards you don't want. The Flannery in this case is completely worthless. Its best use is to draw 2 cards. And now we can set up our Eldegoss Loop. We're pretty much good to go whenever we want to start smacking. And there is a pass. And at this point, Sander has 100% won the game. There's nothing that Niels can do. Sander has 3 prizes on the field that aren't Umbreons. And you're never going to Oko one of those Umbreons. So now it's really just about Sander's going to be able to Bird Keeper. Yep, going to be able to Goss, Bird Keeper, draw the rest of the deck with a Bird Keeper. And at this point, it is game over. Sander is going to make sure that he always has access to the supporter for the next turn. So Sander, we can't see his hand currently, but there is a Cheryl in that hand. And there's a float up. One more play is promoting this Jirachi right here. By promoting this Jirachi, it says you're not going to be able to take a cheeky quick shooting prize on it or anything like that. I'm just going to give it to you. It's totally fine. I don't need it anymore. So Niels is going to say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and take that prize. Quick shooting plus goon. Let's see what you promote. Sander's going to go ahead and promote the Umbreon. The reason you promote the Umbreon is next turn you're going to be able to Cheryl. There's 2 cards left in deck. We have the Pyukumuku and we top deck 1 other card as well. Top deck that. That's totally fine. Quick Ball gets the Goss too. Goss gets the Bird Keeper for next turn. We don't need the Bird Keeper. You always want to have the supporter for next turn available. The Cheryl fully heals. We go into the Goss. We get the float up. Promote the one with the Sun and Moon badge first. Niels is going to go ahead and hit. You've got the Bird Keeper in hand for next turn. So you can Bird Keeper and pass, Bird Keeper and float up. It's really up to you at that point, honestly. No, you can't Bird Keeper and pass. Sorry, you'd be out of cards. You're going to Bird Keeper and float up. Promote the one with the Air Balloon on it, as we're going to see in a second. I think Niels is at this point starting to figure out there's nothing I can do. There hasn't been anything Niels could do for quite some time. Draw the last card. Get the Cheryl back. Again, get the supporter for the next turn back. And float up. Promote the one with the Air Balloon. Niels is going to go ahead and hit at some point. Yeah, he's trying to figure out what to do. There is nothing. It's game over. You can boss twice, but then you have 1 prize card left. Again, that bench management is so crucial in this deck. And Sander is setting himself up to be perfectly fine the whole time. Sander's going to top deck 1 card, use the Pyukumuku, pitch a Puke, put it on the bottom of the deck, grab the Bird Keeper for the next turn, play the Cheryl for this turn, go ahead and float up. Now, we know we have Bird Keeper for next turn, so we top deck Who Cares? Bird Keeper, float up. We grab the Cheryl with the thing, so next turn we can just go ahead and Cheryl, use the Pyukumuku that we drew, and now Niels is going to try and disrupt. The disruption's just not going to work. We have a Ball Search card in hand. Oh, we even have the single strike card. We didn't even have to use the Ultra Ball. We're totally fine. We just draw the rest of our deck with the Tower of Darkness, float up. But even without the Tower of Darkness in play, even without the Umbreon to pitch, you have a Ball Search card in hand. You're good. Yep, and there's the scoop. At that point, it's set up. The lock is over. There's nothing for Niels to really do. The decisions have to be made in the early game for Niels to take that dub. So hopefully you saw kind of the setup of Sanders' deck and kind of the why. What is he doing here? Well, he's making sure to only bench a certain number of prizes. He's using his Gormandized Snorlaxes to the best of their efficiency. The turns where he has a big hand and can't Gormandize for anything, he's going to go ahead and say, I'm going to promote something else. So if you Marnie me, I still have my Gormandize to draw out of the Marnie, because one of the best ways for the deck to lose is a very unfortunate Marnie. So getting down those Gormandize Snorlaxes is huge. Not overbenching is huge. And then once you're in the loop, it's just game over. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you like the deck. It's a cool deck. I've played on ladder a few times. I mean, when you run into someone who has an answer, it's super unfortunate, but otherwise it's kind of fun to set up the loop, and then the loop is kind of mindless when you get there. Remember to like and subscribe, all the other YouTube stuff, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace out.